If there's one thing that'll make or break your mix, it's your snare drum. There's nothing more distracting than a bad sounding snare. Metallica has a whole professionally written memoir on that. The wonderful world of programmed drums has made it very easy for us to get great sounding drum tones without having to resort to renting out a whole space and miking up a whole kit. But sometimes it can be a double-edged sword. Sometimes these samples are so pristine and clean that they can be a little lifeless and a little robotic sounding. Hello friends, it's Gerry with Black Salt Audio, and relax. I'm just messing around. I love Metallica too, just like you do. Today we're going to use Black Salt Audio plugins to bring a programmed snare drum back to life. Alright, so we're in Pro Tools world, and like with any tutorial, let's listen to what we're working with. Okay, yeah, it's very weird listening to an unprocessed snare when all the other drum elements are being processed. But before we jump into it, I actually want to talk about the tracks that we're working with today. Like a lot of bedroom guitarists out there, I am working with programmed drums. Now, I don't want to turn this into an ad for Get Good Drums, but that is what I'm using. And I like their samples because they're very well recorded, but they still sound very natural without too much processing, which means that you have to do the work, and I like that. I have a snare top track and a snare bottom track going into a snare bus track. And normally, if this was an actual live track drum set, I would probably do a lot more processing to the individual tracks like gating and such, but that's the beauty of programmed drums. You literally have zero cymbal bleed. So all I'm really going to do is use a Transient Designer to extend the length of our snare bottom track. You can achieve a similar result with a compressor by using a fast attack and a crazy ratio of 8:1, but I like using this plugin because you can adjust individual frequency bands. I'm going to focus on the mid and low mid frequency bands. Cool, so you can hear the snare wires rattling just a little bit longer. Now I'm going to blend the snare top and the snare bottom track together. Awesome, I think that's a good blend. Sometimes when you have too much snare bottom, it can start to sound funny. But once you dial it in just right, you can really notice it when you mute it that you're missing out on a lot of body on your snare. On that note, I'm actually just going to move on to the snare bus already. I'm going to skip an insert and leave it open for some secret sauce that we're going to add later and load up the good old SSL channel. We're going to use the EQ section to shape up our snare. I'm going to filter out a lot of that unnecessary low end, boost it around 3K for some bite, cut around 500 to get rid of that boxiness, and then finally boost around 200 for some low end. Next, I'm going to use the compressor section of the plugin to really emphasize that transient attack. I'm going to set the ratio to 3:1, keep the attack slow, but increase the release to about as fast as it can go. All right, now let's listen to it before and after. Cool, so that's giving a snare a lot more body and making it sound a lot less like some pokey deal. Next, we're going to send our snare bus into this parallel compression bus and these two reverb buses. We can get into the nitty gritty of parallel compression in another video, and on that note, Sean from Black Salt Audio actually gave me a really cool idea for that, so stay tuned. But I'm using this FET style compressor and I'm just really going to go all the way with it. Parallel compression is just so great for getting that kind of chaotic and exciting energy that's just synonymous with rock drums. It's really great on all different parts of the kit, really. Next, we're going to feed it into this gated reverb bus, and the way that this is dialed in is that this has a relatively short reverb time to kind of help accentuate that pop and let it poke out of the mix just a little bit more. And finally, we have this plate reverb bus that's going to give us the size and bigness, is bigness a word? To our snare drum that's very commonly found on just about any rock record. Much longer decay time on this one. Awesome. And again, if you want me to get into the specifics of those buses, comment down below and we'll try to get a video on it. Okay, so let's see where we're at in the mix now. Okay, it's less of a spiky thing, but now it's kind of buried underneath all the other instruments. It is now time to add some salt. First up is Oxygen. We're going to use this to get more brightness, presence, and crack out of the snare. There's a great preset called Snare Brightener that's going to do just that. But I'm actually going to dial back the control knob since I'm going to be feeding this into the SSL channel, which is already doing a lot of compression. I'm doing this so that all of the frequencies that we boosted are being compressed together and evenly. Let's give it a listen. This Oxygen plugin is like magic. You can really go crazy with it and still have it sound transparent and natural. Next is Escalator, and this is what's really going to breathe life into our snare. On a previous tutorial, I used Escalator on some heavy rhythm guitars very subtly because this plugin can get very aggressive very fast. But with drums, we can abuse it much more since that information is much more instantaneous. Let's use Escalator to give our snare energy and character. This is exactly what we needed to get our snare to poke out of the mix, and not only that, listen to how much more exciting our snare sounds now. Cool, so now let's hear all of that in the context of the mix. Alright, it's almost there. Our snare is coming in much clearer, but now it's sort of disconnected from the rest of the mix. It's just kind of jumping out too much. If we look at our snare bus, we've actually managed to juice up the signal really hot, and it's sitting around the -3 dB area. Turning on the fader will just make the snare disappear again, so this is where Clipper comes to the rescue. We're going to use Clipper to clamp down on those transients without losing any perceived volume. Our snare is now living around the -6 dB area, and it's sitting a lot better in the mix. And now finally, let's listen to the mix with and without Black Salt audio plugins engaged. Oh yeah, big change.
Big change.
Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Friends, our entire collection of plugins is on sale for 40% off until August 15th. So if you like what you heard in this video, head over to blacksaltaudio.com and save today. If there are other mixing tutorials that you'd like us to tackle in the future, be sure to comment down below and let us know what you'd like to see next. Until then, I've been Gerry, and I'll catch you in the next video. See ya!